while ago we talked about Henry Minton and forming the Boule, and he wanted to form it after Skull and Bones. I told you we go into that a little bit. This is the new order that really latched on into America and was politically driven. 1833, a new order comes to the scene, okay? And this is Skull and Bones, all right? It was founded at Yale University. Now, it's gone by different names at times, okay? It was called the Order, you could say the Order of Skull and Bones. It was once called the Brotherhood of Death. Sometimes they call it Bones, Chapter 322, based off of the German Secret Society. It's a lot, it's a lot with the names and all of that, but we commonly know to it most recently now as Skull and Bones. So Skull and Bones was not based in a religion, to me, as much as, say, Rosicrucianism. What I just mean by that is Rosicrucianism is a lot more occultic and esoteric. They both are. Understand this is all Freemasonry, but Skull and Bones to me was more like laser focused. You know what I'm saying? And this thing was a politically driven society, strictly about power. I talked about the whole Chapter 322 thing. A lot of them like to say that could be a part of a German society, which we talked about what happened in Germany with the Illuminati. The Illuminati Society, if you will, and supposedly that being abolished, but maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. This is very controversial because you got all kind of people in government, all the way up to presidents, that's been Skull and Bones. So they don't want them being loyal to a society, for one, a secret society that is under its own rulership, as you would say, or that its own. It has its own agenda as to what it's about and what they're trying to accomplish. And then if that society possibly could be based in another nation, now we're talking, you're bordering on treason now. Part of the rituals, as you've seen with the Kappa ritual, you hold the secrets. You have to hold the secrets. You can't talk about it. You're going to deny it. Some of them will even deny that they was ever a member of it.
You were both in Skull and Bones, the secret society.
It's so secret we can't talk about it.
What does that mean for America? The conspiracy theorists are going to go
I'm sure they are. I don't know. I haven't seen the record.
Number 322?
First of all, he's not the nominee. And, look, I look for...
Are you prepared to lose?
No, I'm not going to lose.
You both were members of Skull and Bones, a secret society at Yale. What does that tell us? Not much, because it's a secret. Is there a secret handshake? Is there a secret code? I wish there were something secret I could manifest. 322, a secret number? There are all kinds of secrets, Tim, but one thing is not a secret. I disagree with this president's direction that he's taking the country. We can do a better job, and I intend to do it. And we'll be watching. Be safe on the campaign trail. John Kerry, thanks for joining us. And we'll be right back.
A question I've always wanted to ask you, Tim, before we get to the book. You asked a question that no establishment media person ever asked of the president and the runner-up in 2004, and that was their involvement in a group called Skull and Bones 322. I got to know, Tim, why did you ask them that question? What were you getting at?
Well, both George W. Bush and John Kerry were involved in college in this fraternity, secret society, whatever, and part of the code that they subscribed to was that they would never talk about it with others other than members. And I was very curious as to how they would react to a question about it. Whether they would come clean and acknowledge, or whether they would hold to their college code. It just fascinated me, and I think it gives us some insight into each of them. And they both were honorable to their code. They wouldn't give up much information.
Sure were.
Yeah.
What would you have done if they would have gone on to tell you that they do these bizarre rituals and that it is an extension of a German death cult? Would that have dropped your jaw? I guess you didn't expect that.
Well, it may have ended their campaign.
Yeah, and that really kind of shows us kind of what we have with our candidates, huh? Both coming from Eastern establishment schools, both out of Yale, both members of the secret society. This kind of gives us an idea here that we don't have much of a choice who's our president.
We don't have much of a choice who's our president.
You know, you putting out everything and what y'all about and kind of like a mission statement, and now everybody's seeing what you about. So now it's a lot more reading between the lines and pulling information together and making inferences based on things that actually happened. But like I said, this was America. You had the same thing going on with the British. You had a British element called the group. Now, the group, this is Cecil Rhodes. A lot of y'all heard about Rhodes and Cecil Rhodes and what he was up to. This dude was a huge racist. This group was tied to the Rothschilds. All right, in Britain, Lord Rothschild was one of the original members of Rhodes's inner circle. All right, and these people, they went over into Africa and wreaked absolute havoc, right, on the indigenous African people that was there. And the thing about them, they didn't really make no bones about it. You know, I'm gonna read a part of this. This is a part of, you know, what their identity is or what their purpose is. This comes from Cecil Rhodes's will. All right, and this is just one of the counterpart groups. Okay, this is just another subset. Let me go ahead and read it. It says, "Why should we not form a secret society with but one object? The furtherance of the British Empire and the bringing of the whole world under British rule, for the recovery of the United States, and for making the Anglo-Saxon race but one empire." Let me break this down. Let's unpack it a little bit. Why should we not form a secret society? Okay, why should we not form a secret society? It means we have a society and it's going to exist in secret. That means whatever we want to do, whatever we're trying to do, it's a secret, i.e. a conspiracy. Stop with all this conspiracy theory, disinformation, and it's BS, man. It's BS. These people who throwing that word out, they're a part of it. They either idiots or they're a part of it. It's crystal clear. Why should we not form a secret society but with one object, meaning one objective? And what is your objective? He's saying it right here. The furtherance of the British Empire, manifest destiny, bringing the whole world under British rule, manifest destiny, for the recovery of the United States. How can you recover the United States when it already has a president, a Congress, you know, a Senate, a nation? How can you do that? How can you do that? You're going to have to take over the country some kind of way. I'm showing you the way they did it. How are you going to take over the country? Come on, man. The recovery of the United States. And last but not least, for making the Anglo-Saxon, i.e. the Aryan, race but one empire. White supremacy. White supremacy. Come on, y'all. Freemasonry, secret society, white supremacy, Luciferian doctrine, Satanism. It's all here. It's all here. I'm showing it to you. I'm giving you the facts. What you want to do with it is what you do with it. This comes from Hegelianism, okay? Or Hegelianism, however you want to pronounce it. It's two guys who really should get the credit for this. A guy by the name of Johann Fichte and George Hegel. In Hegelism, two key things you need to understand is conflict is essential. In Freemasonry, there is a phrase or a mantra that is, out of chaos comes order. You'll hear that sometimes. Out of chaos comes order. That's the same that comes from this. Conflict is essential. It's the same thing. You need people at each other's throats. You need people fighting. You need the left versus the right. You need the blacks versus the whites. You need the rich versus the poor. You must, conflict is essential to maintain what? The state is God. The state is God. So all that stuff on the flag and pledging allegiance and in God we trust, this is who they're talking about. Themselves. Okay? The state is God. It's them. That's who they're talking about. And you know what God they serve. We've broken this down and I'm continuing to break it down. It's right here in front of you. The only duty of the citizen is to serve, quote unquote, God. That's the purpose of a citizen. So again, the duty of the citizen is to serve God. Who is God? God is the state, the government. The government. What is the government made of? The secret societies are influencing the government. And we know who the God of the secret societies is. So you'll start to really be able to pull this thing together and understand what you actually live in. A citizen can only attain freedom by being obedient to the state. Is that the world we live in, or is it not? If you want to jump in your car and drive to the next state over, you might get pulled over on the way. what you getting pulled over for? Supposedly for being disobedient, right? Some sort of traffic violation, some sort of stipulation or statute, something, a sticker on a car, a sticker on a license plate, having a license plate, having a driver's license. All of this stuff that's been put on you, right? But is this reality? Like, what is this? But you must be obedient to the state to experience that so-called freedom. Let's say you want to jump on a plane and you want to fly to another country and experience that culture, and you got the money and you can pay for the ticket. Can you just go? No, you can't just go, right? You got to have a passport. You got to be obedient. You got to show your papers. You got to show who owns you. You got to show who owns you. You got to show who do you belong to, right? And we don't like to think of it that way because people like to think they have freedom. But this is how the system was set up. It's set up so that you can believe that you have a certain freedom, so that you will participate in the system. The whole point of the thing is to get you to participate in it. Because if we don't participate in it, it don't work no more. It's just point blank. It's that simple. If we don't participate, it don't work. And you think I'm just adding on extras to it, right? Let's read something from Hegel himself. By virtue of this participation, subjective liberty and conceit, with their general opinion, some are individuals, can show themselves palpably efficacious and enjoy the satisfaction of feeling themselves to count for something. Go vote, right? Go vote. We're in an election year right now. Go vote. That's what you keep hearing. Go vote. Why? Why? Because they need you to participate in the system. You gotta believe it's real. You see what I'm saying? You have to believe that it matters, right? Your vote counts. Your opinion matters. I voted, get a bumper sticker, a button on your shirt. I participated in the system. I tell a lot of people who ask me, how to get started in this type of information and how to, how they don't know what books to read. Maybe they don't have time to read a lot of books. A lot of people don't, they just didn't come up reading books, you know what I'm saying? And they just, it's hard for them to wrap their head around doing that. What I tell people is, you'll get to the books. When you have a thirst strong enough for the knowledge, you know what I'm saying? When you become a fiend, if you will, a truth fiend, for the knowledge, you're going to get to the books. What I would tell you is that one thing you can start out with is The Matrix. The movie The Matrix. Just sit down and watch the movie. Watch part 1, watch it again. Watch part 2, watch it again. Watch part 3, then watch it again. You understand what I'm saying? That movie had a lot of information in it for them to try to show you what was going on in this reality. Now, it's a lot more to it, but it fits. This is an aspect of reality. It's a dual nature to reality. So what we're talking about right now is really the material side of it. But it talked about that. It talked about a lot of the esoteric teachings as well. If you remember in that movie, when Neo finally gets to the source, right? I think it's in part 2. He finally, goes through all these hoops and all this stuff. And he gets in there, he gets to the source, and the guy talks to him, right? And he tells him something. And I want you to really listen and understand what he said. I can't play it, but I'm gonna read to you what the guy said, right? He was talking about the Oracle, which was the black woman who was his counterpart, all right, if you understand what was going on here. But that's who Neo kept going to for information and for guidance, right? That says a lot already, esoterically. Y'all just got to really pay attention. But he was always having to go to that black woman to get the truth and to get the information. But this is what he said. He said, she stumbled on a solution to whereby nearly 99% of all test subjects accepted the program as long as they were given a choice, even if they were only aware of the choice at a near unconscious level. Okay, that's huge. That's huge. For those who haven't seen the movie, understand this movie basically is about humanity being trapped inside of a virtual world. While their physical bodies are hooked to these machines, that machines are able to project in a sort of a dream state reality to them, but really based on their own understanding and ideas of who they are. But a lot of people were not being able to accept that fake world. even though they had known no other world. A lot of them born into the matrix, but still at some point they would have a break, right? It'd be like a psychological break because they just knew something wasn't right. They were constantly trying to make sure they could find a way that people would accept it, because they need you to accept the system in order for the system to work. So what he's saying here is she figured out a way that almost everybody would accept the system if they were given a choice, even if they were barely even aware of the choice that they were making. So when I'm saying that, you are participating in a system by choice, okay? And the fact that you're even participating is you making the choice to stay in the system. What you're saying is, I'm buying into the system. I believe that there's change. Remember, Obama was selling hope, right? Hope. Because you can't come out and tell the truth that they're in control. They're in control on the left and the right. This is Hegelism at play. You're living in it. But as long as you're willing to participate, as long as black people are getting slaughtered and brutalized by the police, but we're going to go protest. We're going to go protest in hope that we can convince somebody on the other side to convince some other people to change a law for us, right? As long as some white people are looking at it like, hey, I support the police, I support the establishment, I support the system. Yeah, my life kind of sucks right now, but that's because of the last president who was a different political party than what I am. But boy, we got this new president and I really like him. He really speaks to us. He's for us. What you're really saying is, I accept the system. This is a contract. These people got you under contract. And we're volunteering to be a part of this. We're accepting the contract on a near unconscious level. Come on, man. They are the system, the state, i.e. God. And then there's everybody else. And all you have to do is keep constant conflict between everybody else. You keep constant conflict between everybody else, nobody's going to be paying attention as to what's really going on. One thing we need to understand, the Civil War, I kind of talked about it earlier, that what was going on with these banks was a big cause of the war. See, a lot of people are under the impression that it was just the issue about, the racist whites in the South wanting to have slaves, and then the good whites in the North wanting to set them free. That's really not the case. That's a nice narrative to paint, but that's not what happened. For one, you had mounting pressure from guerrilla warfare that was going on with the Gullah Geechees. So you had the Gullah Geechees and the Black Indians, if you want to say, fighting against the white supremacists in the South. Okay, this is putting pressure, all right? At the same time, though, you got a different kind of pressure being put on Lincoln by the banks. And what they're looking at it like, look, we're going to basically force you guys into a civil war, because Lincoln is calling to the South like, hey, look, y'all going to have to, pay some of this debt, that we got over here. And they're like, nah, we ain't got to pay nothing. The South, everything was paid for because you got stolen labor. Everything is free. It's all profit. Everything for them is in the green, right? Whereas in the North, you still had a lot of expenses, debts, and then you got to pay the people to actually work. You can't just, steal people, right? So this becomes a problem. And they're like, well, listen, and Lincoln is like, listen, man, we need y'all to help us here, because this ain't gonna end well for us. And the South again was just like, nah, we're gonna hold it down, on our own, and then y'all up here supporting these people. They're looking at it like, we got this war going on here, with the Geechees. And on top of that, you want us to take resources and pay for the North, who y'all trying to free these people. Conventional thinking would have been that the South was going to win, right? Because the South had the military schools, the South had the money, the South had the soldiers, they had everything what they needed. The turning point in the war was the black soldiers and the blacks who came in and fought. Is a huge part of why the Union was able to actually end up winning the thing. But that's neither here nor there. What you need to understand is Lincoln was pretty smart. He was like, look, we don't have to go to y'all to be funded. What we can do is go ahead and create our own money, right? So we're going to go ahead and create the greenback. So Lincoln initiated the greenbacks to where now we can fund this war. We can get as much money as we need or whatever, and we don't owe the central banks anything. And we can start, and if they win the war, you got to think, if the North is to win, then greenbacks can become law all over the land, all over the nation. And you can basically kick these guys out again and get rid of them again. So this is ultimately a huge part of what got Lincoln killed. Lincoln was not a person who was so, pro-black or so anti-slavery. He had whole statements and quotes about how if he could keep the Union together and not free a single slave, then he would. So it wasn't like they hated him because he was, supporting the blacks. Like, that's not what it was. You know what I'm saying? You got to look a little deeper and understand how these things really happen. It's about money. It's about money. It's about power. Now, they all on the same team at the end of the day, but they jockeying for position. 1860, they ratified the 14th Amendment, okay? And what they did was allow them to pledge the assets of the South. Like I said, everything in the South was already paid for. And see, 11 years later, 1871, you had a corporation, okay, called the Government of the District of Columbia, all right? And this was turned into the United States in 1878. So this is when the United States Corporation is coming into existence as we understand it today, okay? A lot of us think this is a country, a nation, and all of this. This is a corporation. This is a business, and it has a purpose. Okay, it has a purpose. There's a lot of people who took part in this and to get everything to where they wanted it. One of them was J.P. Morgan. You've heard that name, J.P. Morgan, Morgan Chase, his companies. Well, this guy was around during the height of this stuff, all right? And he was tied in heavily with Skull and Bones, although he wasn't an official member as far as we know. J.P. Morgan went to the University of Göttingen, Germany, where he was surrounded by Hegelian culture, even though we can't put a particular society on him. Like I said, he wasn't Skull and Bones, but we know that he still followed the Hegelian blueprint, and I've gone over there as to what that is. Now, you got to understand, the key part about him right now is that his company controlled guaranteed trust since like 1912, okay? So we're going to go into this. So, but we look at him more like a go-between, a middleman, something like a mob affiliate, right? And see, when he died, his company became Morgan Stanley & Co. And now the Stanley guy who was put in was Harold Stanley. Now this guy was definitely Skull and Bones. So soon when Morgan dies, you got the company Morgan Stanley & Co. You already know. So now you got Skull and Bones, Freemasonic order in place. So Guaranteed Trust Company of New York, right? It's founded in 1864. Now, what you want to keep in mind is another one called Brown Brothers. All right, now Brown Brothers, Harriman, private bankers up until 1933. It was Harriman until they merged, with Brown Brothers. Now, if you follow me here, the public frontman for Guaranteed Trust and Brown Brothers was a guy by the name of Matthew C. Brush. All right, now Brush was another one kind of like Morgan. He wasn't Skull and Bones. All right, but what we do know is that he was a 32nd degree Knights Templar and a Shriner. Right, so this guy's a high-ranking Freemason. You got to be a high-ranking Freemason to be a Shriner. Okay, so if you look at it, the original capital, the startup capital for Guaranteed Trust came from primarily four families. You had the Whitney family, the Rockefeller family, the Harriman family, and the Vanderbilts. Okay, these are all names that are still relevant and very important even to this day. But what we're going to talk about right now is Harriman. Okay, a little bit about Harriman. Now, W.A. Harriman graduated Yale, okay, in 1913, and this guy was made Skull and Bones. His dad was Edward Harriman, and he was a known scammer, right? This dude was a known scammer. He took over $60 million just through his various hustles. Now, that's way back then, so you can imagine the value of that in today's time and how much money that would actually be. This guy had plenty of money. In fact, Edward gave over $250,000 to the Republican Party after FDR asked for it. To keep that in mind. He gave over $250,000, but the funny thing about it is FDR still basically was talking down on him. He didn't trust him. He was saying, he was a man of deep-seated corruption and an enemy of the Republic. An enemy of the Republic. When he say Republic, we're not talking about the Republican Party. He means the nation. W.A. Harriman, okay, him being the son, he seemed to blend into the system a little bit better than his dad was. Just some of the things I'm going to touch on is the guy was a director of Guaranteed Trust in 1917, which, he then merged that with Brown Brothers in 1933. Now, we all know in 1933 what was happening in America, but we'll get into that. See, the guy Harriman was ambassador to the Soviet Union in 1941. He was ambassador to Great Britain in 1946. He was Secretary of Commerce in 1946. He was special assistant to the President Truman in 50. U.S. representative at Paris peace talks on Vietnam 1968. Chairman of the Democratic Party Foreign Policy Task Force in 1974. Now keep that in mind, chairman of the Democratic Party Foreign Policy Task Force, but his dad was giving $250,000 to the Republicans, right? So you got to understand again, Hegelianism, this is simple. This is very simple. There are no left, there is no right. This is just one thing. Everything else is just put in front of you to get you to play the game. And that's what I want to get across and get y'all to understand, okay? But so this guy was working with the Soviets, right? And basically what he was doing was trying to build the Soviets up. He knew that they was going to have to go at it with Hitler. And these people were going to support and fund Hitler as well, but they had to support and fund his adversaries, right? Before that, it wasn't what we know it as today as some kind of superpower. Between 1917 and 1921, Soviets expanded into Siberia and into the Caucasus. Now, publicly, the U.S. was against this, and they sent troops along the Siberian Railroad, but the real reason was not to stop the Soviets. It was really to keep the Japanese from getting in, all right? And this is kind of the beginning of some of the turmoil with Japan. As you know, later Japan comes in, hits Pearl Harbor, and the United States gets cast into this war that they weren't going to enter. You know what I'm saying? They wasn't going into that war, in my opinion. I don't think they were ever going to go in, or if they were going to go in, they was going to go in late, conveniently late, so that it was no chance, and Hitler and them was going to win. But Japan kind of threw a monkey wrench in the game. Now, as far as Harriman, how he helped the Soviets, okay. See, first, he helped them by giving them Western technology, okay. He started building that infrastructure so much to the point that Stalin himself said in 1944 that 2/3 of all their industry was built by the United States Corp. Just think about that. It's Stalin himself saying that about the support that the United States was giving the Soviets. 1941, Harriman was appointed Lend-Lease Administrator over the flow of U.S. tech to the Soviets. How does he even get in that position? He was only supposed to send military goods, but ended up sending industrial equipment in large amounts, and he was responsible for shipping Treasury Department currency plates so they could freely print U.S. dollars. This is how much that this guy and what was going on in America, if you want to call it now the deep state, this is kind of where this is being created. This is what these people were doing. They're building up these other nations who you think today are some kind of enemies, and they just can't stand each other. Russia is interfering, and Russia doing this, and China's doing that. Listen, the same secret societies work together to build up America, to create a stronghold, are the same ones who help build up those nations, because they have a global agenda that they got to suppress black people all over the planet. So this is when people talk about a global anti-black war, a global white supremacist regime, or whatever you want to call it. Cool, I'm with all that. You could call it that. That's accurate. It's accurate. It's just it don't tell the whole story. It's more to it than that. Now, I talked a lot about the United States, or the deep state, we'll say, and Harriman and these guys assisting the Soviets, right? They were setting them up for a conflict with Hitler. They had to make sure Hitler was big and strong enough to do what he needed to do. So let's talk about Hitler and who assisted Hitler. How did he get his money? All right. Well, Hitler got a lot of support. Hitler had a ton of support. But one of the people who was, front line as far as supporting Hitler is a guy by the name of Fritz Thyssen. But Fritz was a Nazi, basically, and he made his money through the steel industry. All right. He's got a book called I Paid Hitler. You can go check it out, get into it, and see what's going on. But the key is he got Wall Street loans to build, to help build up the German industry. Originally, it wasn't the Nazi Party. It was I think the German Workers' Party, or the German Worker Union, or something to that effect. But Hitler was backed by a secret society, an occultic secret society, based out of Germany. If that sounds familiar. They helped him get to where he wanted to get to. He ended up changing the name to the Nazi Party, and that was all she wrote. Hitler was an occultist, so you got to understand that Hitler was definitely an occultist, definitely in the esoteric teachings, and that entire war and that conflict was all on another level. It wasn't some regular stuff, as far as just we want some land from somebody, or we want resources for somebody. It was critical that they had to do it. They had to go in there. They had to set up a state for Israel because of what they have put in the Bible as pertaining to these people. You have to have a reason, a catalyst for the whole thing. What I'm saying is this whole thing was a setup through this Thule Society and Hitler putting the Nazi Party to the front lines of what they was trying to do. But like I said, money came from all directions. The flow of the funds went through Thyssen's banks, okay? And one in particular was, I'm just going to try to say this, Vor Handel in Sheepvart, all right, whatever. But this bank controlled the Union Banking Corp. That's what you need to know. So this bank, that was a Thyssen bank, okay, Nazi funded, supported through loans and backed by money coming out of New York, Wall Street, all right? And this is a key bank when it comes to funding the Nazi movement and funding Hitler. So let's take a look at it a little bit, all right? So it's known as a joint Thyssen-Harriman operation. So now you got Thyssen and Harriman coming together and putting this Union Banking Corp in the position to do exactly what they needed it to do. So it says, 1922, Harriman goes to Germany to meet the Thyssen family, and a deal was struck. Now they came together to create a private bank in New York, the Union Banking Corporation, 1924. Harriman's partner was George Herbert Walker, grandfather of H.W. Bush, became president of the bank. 1926, he appointed his son-in-law, Prescott Bush, to be the vice president. So these Bushes and his Bush family is huge in this. A lot of people have heard about this and, glossed over it and talked about, they think that, Bush's granddad or something had something to do with the Nazis. And, you hear whispers and stuff like that. But I'm giving it to you right here as to exactly how. So let's take a look at the Union Banking Corp's directors. And as you can see, out of all these names here, it's littered with skull and bones, Freemasons, and Nazis, all right? And these people are having the same agenda, same mantra. It's the same thing. When Nazis come out of Germany, skull and bones, remember the chapter 322, the German secret society. We can take it back to Ingolstadt. It's all right here in front of you. But if you look at the bottom here, you see Prescott Sheldon Bush. This guy's skull and bones, all right? Prescott Sheldon Bush is skull and bones, and he's the director of the Union Banking Corp, which was a Thyssen-Harriman joint operation. So what we want to talk about now is, at this point in history, they came to Woodrow Wilson. They promised him the presidency if he just made sure he got America back in their hands, in their control. Now, Woodrow Wilson, he took the bait. He signed the Federal Reserve Act of 1913. Okay, and this gave the Freemasons full control of America's money, or you could say the banks. It gave them full control of America's money system. And Woodrow Wilson, by doing that, he was clear on what he did. It's not that he didn't know. At this point, everybody knows. It's just a matter of who got the heart to stand up to these people, or who's getting bought out by them, or who's intimidated by them. Now, let's take a listen to what something that Woodrow Wilson said that I found was, pretty incredible. He said, some of the biggest men in the U.S. in the fields of commerce and manufacturing know that there is a power so organized, so subtle, so complete, so pervasive, that they had better not speak above their breath when they speak in condemnation of it. Let's unpack that just like we did some of these other quotes. Some of the biggest men in the United States. So this is some of the most richest, most powerful, most influential people in fields of commerce. That's everything bought and sold, manufacturing, everything that's created. They know that there is a power so organized. What is organized? That means they come together, right? Two or more people coming together. This is a strategy. This is a conspiracy, whatever you want to call it. But they're so organized. They're so subtle. They're subtle. That means they're secret. So complete, so pervasive, that you better not even speak above your breath when you're speaking in condemnation of it. Now, you telling me that's not a secret society? You telling me they don't have a strategy? You telling me it's not a conspiracy? This is a theory? Well, man, a lot of people got the same theory. I'm not the first person to figure this stuff out. I'm just somebody that's putting out the information that's already in existence. This stuff is already out here. So Wilson did what he did in 1913. 20 years later, you get to the 1933, right? You got FDR president, and, history after that is history. America was declared bankrupt, And if you understand bankruptcy, right? America had to put up something for collateral to the so-called creditors, right? And guess what they put up? They put up the people. They put up the people in the country. You, I, whatever, became collateral for this debt on this money that really don't even exist. It doesn't make sense, but it's the reality that we live in because we're accepting the contract. Okay? So they put up the people. Social Security by 1936 was the people being pledged as collateral. Secretary of Treasury is basically who's managing America at this point. You know, up until this point, you could really say that white people were what you would call sovereign. You know, a lot of people talk about these sovereign citizens movement. Ain't no such thing as a sovereign citizen. You got sovereigns and you got citizens. White people lost their sovereignty. We was already up shit creek. But this is pretty much around the time that white people lost their sovereignty when they allowed this to happen. You know, and this is why distractions are so key. You know, you got to have distractions. You got to, you know, keep the people pointing the finger at each other as to who the problem is and what the problem is so that nobody ever looks. You know, it's the whole Wizard of Oz thing. You got the little puny guy behind the wall hiding and everybody's afraid of him. In real life, he's nothing. You know what I'm saying? He's nothing compared to the people. And that's what these people are. They're nothing compared to all of the people. But all of the people are in conflict with each other because that's a part of the structure. That's the Hegelian concept. It's also a Freemasonic concept. It's called out of chaos comes order. Or in the Hegelian, conflict is essential. Same thing. Conflict is essential. But let's continue. If any president was really for America, they would get rid of the Fed. You know, they'd get rid of these central banks. None of this would be a part of American society anymore. But the people who try it, they don't make it. Lincoln tried with his greenbacks. You see what happened. JFK, we'll talk about him later. He came with his, what was it called? U.S. notes. And y'all saw what happened to him. And we're going to touch on that. So if a president was really for the people and was really trying to go hard like that, this is what they be talking about. This is what they be pushing. This is the kind of conversations you would see on the debate screens and when these people are campaigning, they bring this stuff up. They're going to be very silent about this. They don't want no parts of this. They don't want no parts of these people. They're scared. The ones who not scared, they're part of it. Black people as well. This boule crowd, these talented 10th, these people are a part of it. They're a part of it. These so-called black leaders that get put in front of us and try to tell us what we need to do and how we need to think and we need to vote this way and vote that way. They're a part of it. They're getting kickbacks. And deep in their heart, they don't think we can win. But it's very few people that's really going to come out here and really tell the truth, you know, from a righteous place. They were supporting Hitler. I believe the plan was for Hitler to win. The United States was not going to get involved, or maybe they was going to get in late and take a quick L, and everything was going to be Nazis, right? They manifest destiny. What they wanted to do and what they were trying to do was to set up a coup in America, you know, overthrow, decapitate the government, and take power during this time of global conflict. So there was really not going to be any allies to come to the aid of America. So these people will be able to take over, but they still needed a little more help on the inside. So they needed somebody that had some pull and rank in the military. So they went and got this guy, General Butler, and they brought him in. They wanted him to actually lead the overthrow of America. Okay, this is all the same people. It's all the same group. They wanted him to help lead the overthrow, and he pretended to be with it long enough to kind of figure out what was going on. And then he was like, "Nah, I'm not doing this." You know what I'm saying? He peeped game, and he realized what the implications was about to be, and he tried to shut the whole thing down. Well, he did. I mean, they didn't accomplish that goal in that way, but he went before Congress, you know, and tried to let them know what was going on. But most of the people in Congress is already wrapped up in it. This is what happens. These people get elected office. These people control who's in elected office. They fund them. They finance them. So they always able to one hand watch the other. 1971, Nixon appointed George Bush. Now this is H.W. Bush. Now he's skull and bones, all right? They appointed him as ambassador to the UN. This guy had no experience, zero experience. He shouldn't even been in that position. If you think about what W.A. Harriman was doing with the Soviets, you basically could say that's what Bush's job was with Communist China. They wanted to make sure that this Communist China party was able to get established and get a foothold and get control over there. Nixon's job was to help Communist China become a superpower so that they would beef with Russia, right? And then ultimately America. He had help, and one person that helped him was Henry Kissinger, and at the time he was associated with Chase Bank. So Chase Bank name always gonna pop up in this. But yeah, they wanted China to be able to beef with Russia and then ultimately America, because they don't care about America. That's something that y'all gonna have to, some of y'all gonna have to really wrap your head around, is that the people who are controlling this nation don't care about this nation. A good bit of them don't even live here. You know what I'm saying? And I just think, for us, for black people, we can easily get that. We can see that. We get it. You know what I'm saying? On a deep level. I think a lot of white Americans, some of them really don't believe that. I think they really are into this patriotism thing and really just, they're really buying into it. They're really buying into it. But if you're really gonna buy into it, they gave you patriotism. They created it. So if you really believe in what this stuff is supposed to be built on, then you need to be educating yourself and trying to do whatever you can do within your power legally to disrupt this system, right? And to shine a light on this, and you got those groups out there. You got the people who, are constitutionalists. I've seen them. They know what's going on, and a lot of them know what's going on. They got their little groups, and they kind of looked at as quacks, and they kind of looked at as a little loopy, and they got to be making this stuff up. But nah, man, this stuff, this is what it is. It's just history. It's not being taught to you in a traditional way, and it's not being taught to you by somebody that you used to getting this kind of information from. So it might be a little uncomfortable, or it might be a little shock to your ego, but it is what it is. This is why I'm giving you names and places and people, and you can just go and do the research yourself. And part of the plan is for America to fall at some point, and that's what people are kind of getting into now. They're looking at this Trump thing. Everybody's kind of whispering civil war, but they're not understanding civil war. How? Who's supposed to be fighting who? You see what I'm saying? I mean, what are they trying to do? Are they trying to create a situation where just the black people and the white people are fighting each other, or the black people are fighting the police? The patriots are going against the government. What is actually supposed to go on? It sounds more like anarchy. You know what I'm saying? It sounds like chaos. But again, out of chaos comes order. Conflict is essential. This is what they do. This stuff is a distraction. I know, but just all what they're doing with the police killings and showing this stuff over and over again. It's a whole lot more these people got planned, and you just got to get into this and kind of understand how they operate. I'm just showing you the method of operation, and that's my goal with this, to show you that it's real. They've done it time and time again. This isn't, so when you hear it now, it's not mind-blowing to you. It's not so far-fetched because you've seen them do it before. And that's what I'm showing you. You've seen it because you understand these people are interwoven on both sides. It ain't no left or right. Get that stuff out of your head. Democrats and Republicans, get it out of your head. Get it out of your head, or you're never going to figure this stuff out.
Politics today, and you'll hear me say that to the crowd today, politics today is pro wrestling. It is pro wrestling. And you know what I mean by that? I mean by that the Dems and Repubs in front of you and in front of the public is going to tell how they hate each other and how they're different. But as soon as the cameras go off in the back room, they're all going out to dinner together. They're all buddies cutting deals. It's just like pro wrestling. In front of the public, we hate each other. We're going to rip our heads off. But in the locker room, we're all friends.
Are you suggesting professional wrestling is fake?
I'm suggesting politics is fake. I'm suggesting politics is fake. I'm suggesting politics is fake.
So let me jump into this. The one thing we need to understand about Lincoln, and we're going to tie this back into Freemasonry, white supremacy, all of this stuff. We know Lincoln was killed by John Wilkes Booth. Now, what you may not understand is the connection between Booth and Albert Pike. Booth was a part of a paramilitary organization called the Knights of the Golden Circle. All right. So was Jesse James, by the way. But Booth was a part of the Knights of the Golden Circle. Now, we know that Albert Pike is a high-ranking 33rd degree plus, I say, but 33rd degree Freemason Scottish Rite. Okay, so he's not Skull and Bones. This a different breed here. Okay, so now we've dealt with what we've had to go through with the Rosicrucians. And now you got you seeing the rise and power of Scottish Rite Freemasonry as well. And these guys is what come together and form the Ku Klux Klan. If you actually get into it, the Ku Klux, I believe, is Greek, meaning golden circle, some of that along those lines, and then Klan is Scottish, right? So as you know, this guy was a part of the Knights of the Golden Circle with Booth. Now, when you're talking about the Klan, a guy by the name of Nathan Bedford Forrest, him and Albert Pike together formed the Ku Klux Klan. So the Ku Klux Klan is a Masonic organization. This is how we know it. This is a fact. I mean, man, it's what it is. You know what I'm saying? It is what it is. The Ku Klux Klan is a Freemasonic order. It's just like any other Mason group. You know, you can look at it like a fraternity if you want to, but you gotta, like, we already talked about these Greek fraternities, the Divine Nine fraternities. We talking about, you know, these Blue Lodges, Freemasonry, Eastern Stars, and all this stuff. And here go your other brothers, Ku Klux Klan. These are your brothers. They're your brothers in Freemasonry. Point blank, period. That's a part of it. So Nathan Bedford Forrest, raging white supremacist, and unfortunately, he was able to practice his white supremacy in the most vicious and violent forms. You know, I'm gonna read a little bit of this. The Fort Pillow Massacre in Tennessee on April the 12th, 1864, in which some 300 African American soldiers were killed, was one of the most controversial events of the American Civil War. Though most of the Union garrisons surrendered and thus should have been taken as prisoners of war, these soldiers were killed. And so basically what they did was they had a battle and the Confederates won. And usually what they would do with the white troops when they would surrender, and this happened, this ain't the only time or place this happened. When the white troops would surrender, they'd be taken prisoner. But when black troops would surrender, they'd be killed instantly. Okay? They'd be killed instantly because they wanted to kill that spirit. They wanted to kill that drive. You know what I'm saying? You can't have black people walking around that have taken up arms and killed white supremacists. That would be a huge problem for them. You got to understand, this is how they're looking at it. This is how they're looking at it. You couldn't have that scourge of freedom. You know what I'm saying? These black men who've tasted freedom and tasted justice. You didn't want, you being, you know, a white supremacist, you didn't want those people to be walking around and spreading that message and saying, wait a minute, y'all, we don't have to suffer like this at all. But this guy killed 300 at one time, so he's highly regarded. You know, he's highly regarded in the white supremacist subculture, and this is why. But the key thing I wanted to just talk about was this guy served as the first Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan. All right, so it's Nathan Bedford Forrest. I've already touched on, you know, what Pike was about. We know he was definitely Freemason, as you can see by his regalia and everything that he wears and talks about and everything. This guy's super high ranking. And we've shown the connection to the Ku Klux Klan. It says here, General Albert Pike was the spiritual and actual founder or co-founder of the original Ku Klux Klan. Okay, in addition to his function as intelligence officer of the treasonous Confederacy, and in addition to his close liaison with Lord Palmerston's Italian collaborator, Mazzini. You know, Confederacy was an act of treason. They took up arms against America. They went to war with America and killed American troops. And people still to this day walk around with Confederate flags. But this is a treasonous organization. And this guy had a statue in Washington, D.C. You know, just think about that. A traitor to the nation. A person who murdered American troops. We talk about his support to troops and all that. He killed American troops. I mean, he was a part of that. What are y'all talking about? But he's got a giant statue downtown Washington. You know what I'm saying? Why? Why? Because this stuff ain't about America. This ain't about no patriotism and no troops or none of that. The troops are necessary because you need people to fight wars. That's why you got troops. The media's job is to make the people support the troops. And that's recent. That wasn't always like that either. But the media's job is to get the people to support the troops. And the troops' job is to follow orders. But you got to understand where the orders are coming from and what is this stuff really about. Basically, I'm going to kind of run through this real quick. Supposedly, Booth was able to assassinate Lincoln. They gathered up everybody who was involved in the conspiracy and they killed him, except for Booth. They couldn't find him, and then supposedly they found him somewhere and he got shot. But there's this whole thing about that was fake. They had a fake body. They had somebody else's body, and this guy went on a run. So I want to read just a little bit about this. A guy who says he saw Albert Pike. That was in Texas in a little, I believe it was a hotel, saloon type place. And supposedly John Wilkes Booth walks in. And, you know, this is after the Lincoln assassination and everything. And the guy had changed his name a few times. It's a whole thing about it. You can kind of read about it. You know, the Wilkes escape and all of that. John Wilkes Booth escape and all that. It could be a movie. I'm going to say it like that. But the guy says, I was watching General Pike closely. And when suddenly he threw up his hands, his face white, his hair and beard, and exclaimed, "My God, it's John Wilkes Booth." So Albert Pike jumps up, sees Booth walk into the building. He get excited. He screams out, "It's John Wilkes Booth." At the time, Booth is using a fake name. This whole thing is going on. This is way after Lincoln's assassination, and Booth is supposed to be dead, but Booth is not dead. I mean, it shows that Pike and Booth are in the same location. Like I said, I believe this was somewhere in Texas. And he had kind of bounced around a lot, went to a lot of different places. You can really dig into this stuff. But like I said, it doesn't make sense that Pike would have had a statue in Washington unless Washington was about what Pike was about. You know what I'm saying? And they've been campaigning for years, people trying to get that removed, and they wasn't going to touch it. Now, the recent protests and uprisings that happened in Washington, you know, with the whole George Floyd and everything, they actually yanked old Pike down. You know, they just hooked the rope around him and yanked him down themselves. You know, that was just some regular old justice from the people. So to finally pull the statue down, but they was never going to do it officially as a government. But this guy was a Confederate soldier, a treasonous soldier who murdered and participated in the murder of American troops. He's supposed to be the lowest of the low. But they wasn't even thinking about taking this down because you right there in the Masonic capital of the world, really. You know what I'm saying? If you really want to get into it. So this is why. This is Pike himself. I'm going to read the whole thing on this one. Y'all need to hear this and understand this. That which we must say to the crowd is we worship a God, but it is the God that one adores without superstition. To you, sovereign, grand inspectors general, we say this, that you may repeat it to the brethren of the 32nd, 31st, and 30th degrees of the Masonic religion should be by all of us initiates of the high degrees, maintained in the purity of the Luciferian doctrine. Come on, y'all. If Lucifer was not God, would Adonai, which is Jesus, calumniate or basically spread false and harmful statements about him? And he ends it off by saying, yes, Lucifer is God. I mean, come on, y'all. I don't know what else you want. That which we must say to the crowd is we worship a God, but it is the God that one adores without superstition. This is esoteric, y'all, but you kind of got to get into the esoteric, into the occult aspect of what he's talking about. He's playing with you a little bit, but he is serious, though. So you need to understand that, man. It's right there. So when people talk about it, Freemasonry, we done broke this thing down. I done shown you. I don't know what else to show you, but I still got more. But it's right here. This guy is a huge Freemason. I mean, we talking Francis Bacon, right? Rosicrucian, and then you talking Albert Pike in Scottish Rite. You know what I'm saying? Like, these are powerhouses. This is a powerhouse, man. This is a powerhouse. They still read his books to this day. He said the Masonic religion, I told you it was a religion. The Masonic religion should be by all of us initiates of the high degrees. That's high ranking. Like I said, the high degrees, 32nd, 31st, 30th degrees in the Masonic religion, by all of the initiates. The purity of the Luciferian doctrine. Come on, man. That man said if Lucifer was not God, would Jesus be hating on him like he do? Come on, y'all. You know, but I'm going to leave that right there for you, man. I'm going to let that marinate for a second. You know, just think about that. Think about that. Fraternities, Greek fraternities, sororities, Eastern Stars, Freemasons, Boule. Think about our ancestors, man. Think about what they did to us. Think about what they did to our people. You understand? Then gonna create this stuff, gonna bastardize our symbolism, try to steal esoteric teachings and pervert them, and then make it into something wicked so that if you do stumble onto it, you associate it with this. So when people look at stuff from Kemet now, they look at it and they see this. They think it's this. They think it's this the same thing. They think it's the same thing. You know. So in my opinion, is it a conspiracy? Okay. By definition. By definition, if you want to call it that. But again, I say it's simply a strategy. You know, it's a method of operation. It is what it is. It's standard operating procedure. Let's go ahead and run through this, man. Let's close this thing out. So Kennedy. What I wanted to talk about with Kennedy, it's a whole lot with Kennedy. I'm just gonna skip through all of that. Y'all just gotta know that Kennedy had his executive order 1111 0. You know, and basically what he wanted to do was put forth United States notes. I touched on that earlier. It was similar to Lincoln putting out the greenbacks. He understood what was going on. He's like, look, we put out our own money, put out our own notes. It's going to take care of the debt. We don't owe these people. We can get them off our back, and we can build America and do all this great, cool stuff. But, you know, what he was doing basically diminished the power of the Fed. And when you start doing that, you start playing with that, you already know what's coming. You already know what's coming. But he was able to put $4.5 billion in the circulation. What's so crazy is right after they killed him, you had the guy John McCloy, was president of Chase Bank again, and World Bank. He was put on that Warren Commission to investigate the murder. You know, most people look at the Warren Commission as just something to make sure that what really happened never gets found out. A lot of people looking real side-eyed at Lyndon B. Johnson, who was the vice president, who got sworn in right after, right after the assassination, on the plane home. This guy, they say the first thing he did was overturn what Kennedy had set in place. It was a little more to it than that. It took a little bit more, but basically he definitely turned the ship in the opposite direction. He definitely made sure that it wasn't gonna go down like that. And this guy was a staunch white supremacist, a raging racist. He eventually did, sign the Civil Rights Act and all of that. But again, theater, y'all, political theater. The guy's core was white supremacy. The guy was a Freemason, and the guy was friends with another major Freemason who hated black people with a passion, which was J. Edgar Hoover. Supposedly he wasn't very high ranking, but he definitely was in there. And matter of fact, take a listen to this.
In 1994, over 30 years after Lyndon Johnson assumed the presidency, and over 20 years after his death, the United States government began releasing tapes of his presidential phone conversations. One of the most interesting tapes they listened to was a 20-minute conversation Johnson had with FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover on November 29, 1963.
Well, I'm going to take every precaution I can, and I want to talk to you, and I wish you'd put down your thoughts on that a little bit, because you're more than the head of the Federal Bureau, as far as I'm concerned. You're my brother and personal friend, and you have been for 25, 30 years.
At the end of the conversation, Hoover recommends Johnson consider a bulletproof car. Johnson replies, "I want to take every precaution I can. You're more than the head of the Federal Bureau as far as I'm concerned. You're my brother and personal friend, and you have been for 25 to 30 years." Upon hearing that last sentence, Koppel asked the panel, what did President Johnson mean when he told Hoover, "You're my brother"? Not a single panelist had any idea what Johnson was talking about. But we know, don't we? Lyndon B. Johnson is not always included in lists of presidents who were Freemasons. However, he was in fact initiated and entered apprentice on October 30th, 1937 in Johnson City Lodge number 561 at Johnson City, Texas. He never went beyond the first degree. J. Edgar Hoover, on the other hand, was a 33rd degree Scottish Rite Mason, a York Rite Mason, a member of Federal Lodge number 1, Washington, D.C., and a charter member of Justice Lodge number 46 in Maryland. Lyndon B. Johnson and J. Edgar Hoover were, in fact, Masonic brothers.
All right, so what we want to talk about in regards to Ronald Reagan is we just want to remember that, during his presidency, he was shot. They attempted to assassinate him, and the guy who did it was a guy by the name of Hinckley, right? And the official story, he was just a lone wolf, crazy guy trying to impress some actress or something like that. But what we want to keep in mind is that had that attempt been successful, then Reagan would have been succeeded in his presidency by H.W. Bush, George Bush Sr. A lot of people have made the connection between the Bushes and, everything that has gone on, and we've kind of drawn that out here so you can kind of see their connection through Skull and Bones, also going all the way back to Herbert Walker. You got the Bushes and you have the Clintons. We know that Bill Clinton was Order of Demolay, and that the Bushes come down that lineage of Yale, which is, Skull and Bones. So, and, it's a lot with the Bushes. It's a lot of connection to just a ton of stuff. Not going to get into all of it. A lot of people kind of point out that Bush during his time actually made a big deal about establishing a new world order, and he made speeches about it.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. 100 generations have searched for this elusive path to peace, while 1,000 wars raged across the span of human endeavor. And today that new world is struggling to be born, a world quite different from the one we've known, a world where the rule of law supplants the rule of the jungle.
And as we know, a decade later, you had the terror attacks on 9/11. So a lot of people are looking at that. So yeah, so that's not something that, people missed. A lot of people did catch that, and they've talked about it in the past. Also, as far as Trump, I know right now a lot of people are kind of torn between, is Trump a part of this whole thing, or is he the guy that's coming in trying to, remove everything and put an end to it? If you pay attention to everything I've talked about, you'll come to the understanding that, you don't get to that point, especially something like the presidency. They wouldn't leave something like that to pure chance, right? In this system, just picture it as though, let's say there's 10 agenda, there's 10 items on the agenda that they want to get accomplished in an X amount of years. You might have 5 of those items for a Democratic candidate, 5 of them for a Republican candidate. So depending on which one wins, that's kind of the direction that they're going to go. If you actually take a look at Trump, who he appointed as Secretary of the Treasury, he appointed Steve Mnuchin. Well, what we need to know is that, this guy was a partner at Goldman Sachs. He was there for like 17 years. But as you go a little deeper, you look, it says in 2009, he organized investors, including Hillary Clinton donor George Soros, to buy the failed housing lender IndyMac and rename it One West. Now, One West was sold to the CIT Group in 2015. What we also know is that he worked for Soros Fund Management, which is a firm that was founded by George Soros. So, like I said, Soros' name is out a lot, usually on the Democratic side, usually with funding movements, such as Black Lives Matter and stuff like that. So Mnuchin is a member, or was a member, it says, of the exclusive Skull and Bones secret society at Yale. And it goes on to say, as were George H.W. Bush and George W. Bush, as well as John Kerry. So guys, he's Skull and Bones, and Trump put him in charge of the Treasury. So if you think for a second that Trump is trying to get rid of the central banks, like I told you, one of the signs you will see for a president, if they really for real, you already know what direction they're going to go. To take a member of Skull and Bones and put him over the Treasury, I mean, it kind of speaks for itself. Everybody's going to have their own opinion about that. I'm not here to tell you what to think. I too remember seeing Trump standing in front of the church during the protest. He came out in front of the burnt church with the Bible. I just want to touch on that briefly. A lot of people trying to understand what that was about. Just know that when he was doing that, he was talking to these people. This wasn't for the average American. This wasn't for the average person. It was a message being sent to this group. because he's going to understand his history. Exactly what that message is, I can only guess. I can only speculate as to what the symbology is, you know what I'm saying, behind that. I don't think it's that relevant. Honestly, it is what it is, and it was a moment in time. But yeah, just know that was talking to them. It really wasn't for the general population. These messages are coded for those who are able to decode them. So with that, this is basically covers most of what I was going to talk about in this, in this presentation. Like I said, there's a lot of information that I could have put in here, but this has gone on, it's long enough as it is. It's definitely going to be a lot more to come, but this is a good foundation, a good place to start. Thanks for watching. Peace.